Today I'm here to do something a little bit new for my channel. I'm trying it out to do more of a monthly update video. So this is going to be talking about my plans going into June, talking about my TBR in more detail than in my previous video, talking about a little bit of a book haul, some reading life updates, maybe a little bit of video games and TV. And of course, I would love all of your feedback as this is a new video format for me. And so I'm definitely open to tweaking it or adjusting it to make it more interesting for you all. Now I do want to acknowledge that I'm certainly not the first booktuber to do this, and if I'm honest, probably my largest inspiration comes from Mike's Book Reviews, who does this weekly, and so you're going to see a little bit of similarity in some of the sections in terms of my video topics. All that being said, let's get started. Now first let's talk about my TBR plans for June, which is a rather repetitive thing to do after just putting out a summer TBR video. For full transparency, I filmed that several weeks prior, and as usual I just am talking about all the months of the summer, and I don't want to be repetitive here, so what I'm going to do is dive into the specific books I plan to read in June and talking about several books I haven't yet, because my big update for this month is the fact that I'm now very actively planning a trip for Japan in 2026. I'll share more about that as it gets closer, but essentially it's making me really interested in reading Japanese translated fiction in all the genres I read, and so suddenly the summer TBR that I planned a couple weeks ago needs some adjustments, and all I want to read are these new books. So I'll share with you what I have planned, and of course I'd love for you to weigh in with which ones you recommend, and of course if I finish them I will definitely come back with review coverage, so stay tuned for that. First, I do still plan to read Butter, and this is a Japanese translated book that is about a gourmet chef who's also a serial killer. This book was super buzzy online when the first translation came out here in English, and it's definitely still one that's on my TBR. It actually worked out nicely that I had some Japanese work on there unintentionally, not knowing that I would have this planning coming up so soon and so actively. And the other book that is definitely sticking around for my summer TBR is Water Song by Clarissa Groen, and this again is by the same author who wrote Rainbirds, a book I am dying to reread because it definitely gave me the feel of what I imagine my trip to Japan will be like, and so I'm hoping this one will work as well. Again, I'm not entirely sure. I believe it's dark fiction but mixed with maybe some magical realism. It's one that I very much need to go into. I trust this author at this point and just want to enjoy and experience it for myself. I also want to try reading Strange Weather in Tokyo, which is more of a contemporary romance involving this shopkeeper who ends up having this relationship or back and forth with their former teacher. It sounds like it's supposed to be really illicit from that premise, but I don't think it actually is meant to be. Instead, it is really supposedly a literary device of discussing the contrast and pull between the new and old in Japan, I think. So I'm going to this one very blind. I don't know a lot beyond that, and again, it might be a little bit out of my wheelhouse, a little bit out of the genres I normally review here, but if I like it, I will probably gush about it regardless of whether or not it fits into perfect genre boxes that I normally discuss here. I also want to read Tokyo Uno Station, and this is a story of a ghost that haunts a train station. I understand that involves their life leading up to that point, and again, largely I'm reading this book because of the location, and I don't know too much more about it. And I do want to recognize that you probably noticed that I'm shying away from pronouncing the names of a lot of these authors. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, I just don't want to brutally mispronounce their names on camera, so hopefully as I learn a little bit of Japanese leading up to this trip, I can be more mindful of those pronunciations and actually attempt them on camera for you all if you want to see me do that, but I'm very mindful of the reason I'm not doing it right now. And I also want to do a reread of a piece of true crime that I actually read last year and never talked about in my true crime wrap-up, and that is People Who Eat Darkness by Richard Lloyd Perry. This is the same author who wrote The Ghosts of Tsunami, a nonfiction book that has haunted me, and I've reread that one as well. This is one that involves a young Caucasian woman who goes missing in Japan, and so it is an investigative response and looking at her case and what happened. Again, I've read it before, so I do know how the case falls out, but I will say that despite it probably being the absolute worst book I should be reading as I prepare for a Japanese trip, for whatever reason, the book is really sticking in my head and I really want to reread it because I think it captures a certain angle of Japan that I find quite fascinating, even though it is completely nightmare fuel. And I feel like I should read it now while I'm still many months out from actually doing this trip, as opposed to later when it's going to give me nightmares on a plane trip. So love to know if you have read this one. I can say that I've read it before, so I do already recommend recommend it. Looking forward to reading it again and coming back with some kind of review content there. And then for some fantasy, I want to do a reread of Across the Nightingale Floor by Leanne Hearn, and this is the first book in a Japanese-inspired historical fantasy series. I read the first one quite a ways back and never continued on with the series, and so I would like to reread the first book and then continue on. Again, I really like to immerse myself in some of the historical elements, although I know this one, I believe, leans heavily into the fictionalized side, but I think will be a good jumping off point to dive deeper. And I should say that beyond the true crime I just mentioned, I would love to have your recommendations for really good nonfiction all about Japan. I know there's a lot of travel guides, but it would be also a great opportunity to dive into some history and really look at that, but I'm looking for the right books to do so because honestly, I mostly read fiction. So if you have recommendations, let me know. And the other fantasy I want to read is Lonely Castle in the Mirror, and this is a story that is described to be very Ghibli-esque in nature. I actually don't know much about it, but it is one that pops up when you search fantasy inspired or set in Japan or by Japanese authors, and so it's absolutely one I want to try out and hopefully love because I do love anything in the tone of the Ghibli movies. I know I'm always known for at least talking about my love of dark fiction, but honestly I also love the cute and contemporary at times, especially if it has that Japanese slant to it in terms of the setting. So I probably will love this one even if it seems out of my wheelhouse from what I normally talk about. And then for science fiction, what I think I'm going to do is do a long overdue reread of the first books in the Legend of the Galactic Heroes series. I know there is an anime that is largely inspired by these novels, and I started reading this series, but I wasn't really in the mood for them when I picked them up, and so I have technically read the first couple, but I really wasn't absorbed in the story, and so I've always meant to go back and give them a proper try when I was in the mood for them. And if there's ever a mood to be in the place where I want to read all of the Japanese science fiction, it is now. So I will be going back to these ones. I would love to do a series review once I get through as many of the volumes as I can get my hands on, because I know that this book series and the anime have a huge cult following. There was so much excitement when I first talked about and hauled these books. And then I feel like I let you all down by not coming back and giving the review content that a lot of you were waiting for. So hopefully this summer this will finally happen. And now let's briefly talk about Patreon updates. And so I always like to keep this brief. I don't want to plug my Patreon too much, but I do have a Discord where you get to hang out for the first tier. And then if you want to participate further, we do have a book club where you can vote and nominate books depending on what level you're at. Anyway, what I want to talk about here is that we did wrap up our May book, which was a piece of science fiction. This is the book that was nominated and selected. This is a reread for me, The Quantum Thief, and it's a really mind-tripping mystery story that is very much hard science fiction. It is confusing to a layperson to read, but also so enjoyable, so cool. And I would really like to continue out my reread of the second and third books in this trilogy and put together a series review for you all. However, I'm intimidated to do that just given the fact that I don't think I have the scientific background to really get into the quantum theory discussed in this series. So I'm not sure if I'm the right reviewer to be doing this and if I'm going to get roasted in the comments for even trying, but I'm probably going to do so anyway because again, I love the series so much and it's really enjoyable to pick it back up again. So I shared more thoughts in my Patreon group as a quick video filmed on my phone, and so looking forward to the next month. And what we have planned for June is The Ruins by Scott Smith, which is a horror novel. This is one, again, that was nominated based off the theme that was selected of body horror. It will be a reread for me, and I'm looking forward to getting back into it because it's been many years since I've read it, and I'm also a very different horror reader than I was then. It's very action-based, obviously having the body horror element. I know it's been turned into a recent movie, which I, of course, have not seen because I'm so underwatched when it comes to the genre, but I'm looking forward to getting into it. I think it will be a fun one to read with my patrons. And finally, I also have my patron summer pick. So this is something where my top tier patrons can nominate a book for me to read over the summer months. So I'm not promising to read in June, but it has been selected. So that is The Years of Salt and Rice by Kim Stanley Robinson. And this is an apocalyptic story. This author, of course, is best known for writing more straightforward science fiction. So I'm curious to see how this one will draw the line between horror and sci-fi, the two genres that kind of play around with the end of the world. And I'm very interested in this one given how many of the author's previous books I have really enjoyed. This one honestly is kind of off my radar, but if my patrons think it's a good book for me to pick up. I will definitely be coming back and I'll let you know what I think about it once I get a chance to read it. And now I want to talk about a few books that I've received recently for review, so a little bit of a mini book haul. I'll be talking about books that are coming out in July because of the fact that you won't see a review for them for over a month. The first one is an early arc from Orbit, and that is My Ex, the Antichrist by Craig DeLuey. And this is one that involves possession. I've been hit or miss with this author before, but anytime a story involves any kind of hint of possession, I am 100% there. And so really looking forward to this one, seeing how it pans out. I also have a book by one of my favorite authors, and that is by Cassandra Khaw. So this one is The Library of Helbor, and this one I believe is Dark Academia. Again, an author who I've loved before, so at this point I will just pick up and request whatever they put out next. And this topic sounds great because I do tend to like Dark Academia, even though I'm more drawn to it during the fall months, so I'll keep you posted. I also got another book from Orbit, and that is Red Rabbit Ghosts by Jen Julian. I'll be honest, I don't remember as much about this one. It's kind of a small town and secrets, I believe, investigation into something that is happening. Hopefully by the time I read it, I will have a better synopsis for you all. I'm always curious to see what Orbit is doing in the horror genre, since they don't tend to put out as much as I see from Tor. And another book I'm excited for, speaking of Tor, this is actually Tor.com, and that is Volatile Memory by Seth Haddon. This is not an author I've read before, but I'm curious about this one because it's described as being similar to Ex Machina, which is one of my favorite movies by A24, and so I'm hoping it's going to kind of dive into artificial intelligence and what it means to be conscious, all of that. I am a sucker for those themes. I don't care how many times I've read it in books, I will never get tired of reading it, so I'm hoping that this little novella works for me. And if any of you are interested, I'm going to talk a little bit about the video games I'm playing and the TV I am watching. And right now, the big game I'm really into is one that I'm not even playing, I'm just watching my husband play, and that of course is the big buzzy new French RPG, and that of course is Expedition 33. It's a very mysterious start. I don't want to give away too much, but we have this group of individuals going on this expedition and finding out what is there beyond their city, and it is so intriguing. The facial animations, the characters, the music, the costuming, everything is gorgeous, and it's also very, very French. And it's just really exciting to see different versions or spins on what would normally be described as a traditional JRPG. Obviously, this one is not Japanese, but done in that style, and it is absolutely beautiful. I'm tempted to eventually try to play it myself, but I've heard that the easiest mode is not that easy. And so right now, I'm really enjoying getting to experience the story without having to play it myself. And the other video game that is currently on my radar, and the one that I'm personally playing, is called Boomtown. And I've mentioned before that I'm a big fan of the Persona series, and so this has the same turn-based fighting system where you are catching the monsters and having the same turn-based mechanics, but it is also blended in with the pixel art style that feels reminiscent of something like Stardew Valley, but very much tying in the story plot points of something like Stranger Things. So you have these young siblings going to this small town, and there is something creepy happening, and there are people who are going missing, and so you're trying to figure that out. You find out that there's a bit of an underworld type situation happening, and you have to fight the monsters to save the day. I am obsessed with this. I had started with the demo and immediately had to buy it because I just wanted to do nothing but play that game. Honestly, in the last couple of months, I've been kind of hit or miss. I actually haven't played a lot of video games just because I haven't really found one that's grabbed my attention. Well, Boomtown has grabbed my attention. I think it's adorable. It's kind of the right mashup of all the genres I like with the type of fighting system, again, turn-based, that is at my accessibility level. Thank you for that. It's super cozy, amazing music, and I'm really hooked. I love this little indie title and definitely recommend it if you are a video game fan. And then finally, to talk about TV, I am doing what a lot of you are doing and watching the second season of The Last of Us. No spoilers here. I will say that I have seen most of the playthrough of the second game because my husband played it, and while I didn't pay a whole lot of attention at the beginning, I knew the general plot points that kick off the story, and then got to see more of the plot and the story as it progressed throughout the end, and did get to see the finale. So it is a story that I'm interested to see how it's being adapted. There's some choices I like, there's some I don't as much. It's a really hard season to watch, and I do recognize that I think a lot of things that people fell in love with the first season aren't necessarily present in the second. So I understand why both the game and now the TV show are getting mixed reviews. I can't help but see it through, even though I don't think it's as good or as enjoyable as the first season. I'm still here for it and really looking forward to seeing how it all wraps up. We're always slow watching it, so I'm not sure actually when the last date, if it came out already, but we were just, you know, watching at our own pace. And again, no spoilers here. I know what happens, but I won't spoil it for anyone who is not caught up as well. And so just to round it out, I might do an occasional section talking about some life updates, but I'm kind of cautious as to what to put in here because I am mindful of trying to respect my family's privacy and also not giving away too much of my own personal life that might just be giving away information that I should not online. So I will mention that I do have travel coming up for my work in the month of June in North America to a few different cities. And the reason I mention that is I'm really looking forward to having the ability to travel for the first time with my Kobo Clara. And so if you're wondering, I am waiting to do that follow-up review until after the travel is done, because that was one of the major factors why I got the device, was to see how it affected my experience reading on the road, or on planes in this case here. So I'm looking forward to that, looking forward to the travel, and as always I'm going to be a little bit cautious of making sure that there are videos stacked, and so I'm not going to mention where I am until I am back and all of that. And of course this travel again is North American based, so unrelated to the Japanese trip that I'm planning with my husband. And of course even with that one I will talk about the trip as I can, but I'm also not going to advertise when we're on that trip, because I think a lot of book reviewers and content creators in general give a lot away to the internet about when they are or are not in their house, and I like to keep a little bit of security and safety in place. So I'll keep you posted as I can, probably talking generally about the trip. I'd love to do a video talking about what I plan to pack on that trip, my Japan inspiration guide in terms of some of my reading as it leads up, and what I plan to bring, but I'm going to carefully stagger that content so that I'm not giving away my actual travel dates. So thank you so much all to those of you who watch this. I would love to know what you think of this format. Is this something you would like to see on a monthly basis? And if not, that's okay too. And of course you can let me know if you like this format, but recommend if you have changes. I have to guess that probably a lot of you do not care about the video games I'm playing. I enjoy talking about them, but I can also keep it to myself if no one cares. I will try to keep timestamps in these type of videos so you can skip around to what you enjoy, what you don't. I actually really enjoy watching these videos. It's a good chance to check in with some of my favorite creators when I don't always catch all of their other videos. So again, if there's anything I'm not including in this update video that you'd like to see in future months, let me know that as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to like, comment, subscribe, all those good things, I appreciate it. And otherwise, I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.